Very good morning, friends. Today I am there before you with a very interesting as well as a very bold poem of its own time. This poem is written by Dr. Samuel Johnson, and do not get it confused by Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson was the poet of the 17th century, whereas Dr. Johnson was the poet of the 18th century. Now, Dr. Samuel Johnson was born in 1709 and he survived till 1784. He was a very famous poet, playwright, essayist during the neoclassical era of English literature, which comprised to the first half of the 18th century, under the reigns of Queen Anne, King George I, and King George II. This era is also known as the Augustan Age. We call it the Neoclassical Age. Under that, there is three categories. One of them is the Augustan Age. This name refers to the Augustan period of the Roman Empire, when Latin literature and philosophy flourished. Perhaps you know about it, because in my previous videos I have talked about different periods of English literature. Now, Johnson anonymously published it and subtitled his poem as a poem in imitation of the third satire of Juvenal, in order to directly name the inspiration of the poem, that is, the satirist Juvenal of the Augustan age. Now, friends, since you are in semester 4, I would like to remind you what is satire. Satire is a technique, a literary technique employed by writers to expose and criticize foolishness and corruption of an individual or a society by using humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule. It intends to improve humanity by criticizing its follies and foibles. There are three kinds of satire. Number one, Horatian satire. This Horatian satire is named after the Roman satirist of the 35th BC, Horace, and its aim is only to make people laugh. This is the very ordinary, very common satire. The purpose is just to make the people and audience laugh. The second satire is Menippean satire, named after the Greek philosopher Menippus from the 3rd century BC. And instead of focusing on societal norms, Menippean satire tends to satirize to an individual character flaw or a particular personality trait, such as mental attitude, as Jane Austen has also done in one of her novels, Pride and Prejudice. Her mother is a kind of Menippean satire. Now, the third satire is the Juvenal satire that you have to read, and Dr. Johnson has dedicated this entire poem, London, to the Juvenal. It's named after the Roman satirist Juvenal, blended with anger. The mission of juvenile satire is to attack individuals, governments, and organizations, to expose hypocrisy and moral transgressions. As for example, this poem, London, a poem in imitation of the third satire of Juvenal. Friends, before I move to the poem, look to this man very intensely, because this, with all intensity, you should see him. He is Sir Robert Walpole, and against him all the vengeance of Dr. Johnson has been oozed out in this poem. Sir Robert Walpole is traditionally regarded as the first Prime Minister of England, and he lived in 10 Downing Street from 1735. But why Dr. Johnson is that much angry? What made him to write this juvenile satire? There are three reasons. Reason number one, in England, under the ministerial umbrage of Sir Robert Walpole, when he had ascended to the state turned into a mercantile nation. A mercantile nation means the state shall export more and import less, and the raw products will be brought from the colonies, and exploitation will be on high. And mercantilism is a seed of capitalism. Society becomes profit-making agency, and we become very much selfish, we become very much utilitarian. And this happened at the time of Sir Walpole, Sir Robert Walpole. Reason number second, Sir Robert Walpole brought the Licensing Act of 1737. This is the reason number two. It is said that Walpole spent around £50,000 in 10 years from 1731 to 1741 in an effort to propagandize everybody through his control over the papers like Gazette and Hip Doctor. And Walpole put an effort to control the work of outspoken writers, are what probably led to the most famous lines from this poem. And it was a kind of a breach of freedom of expression, and Sir Dr. Samuel Johnson was very much hurt and wounded, and that made him to write London. In short, it curbed freedom of expression, this Licensing Act of 1737. Every production had to go through the Chamberlain's men public before public viewership. That created a festering resentment in the minds of struggling writers like Dr. Johnson. Reason number three, the Excise Bill of 1733, which was much against the common people. It was so heavy on their purses. Now in this total entire poem, you will see that there is a discussion at the one side, the old glory of London, and at the same time, there is a picture of the present gloom, the then England. There is a glory of the time of King Edward, Henry, Alfred the Great, King George II. And also at the same time, parallelly, there is a discussion of corruption at the time of Sir Robert Walpole. Also we see that in this poem there are two parallels between the city life, that is of London, and a rustic life which has been represented by Wales or Cambria. Now the poem begins, let me tell you, this poem begins with an epigraph. But bachcha, तुम लोग पूछेगा epigraph क्या होता है? Epigraph is nothing but a short quotation or saying at the beginning of a book or chapter intended to suggest its theme. And in this London poem, there is an epigraph taken from the Juvenal, and it writes, which English translation is, "Who can endure this monstrous city? Who can endure this monstrous city who is an iron will, who can bear it?" Means, इतना ज़्यादा खतरनाक monstrous city में रहना कौन चाहता है? कौन इतना ज़्यादा guts वाला होगा, iron willed होगा, जो इतने तकलीफों के बावजूद लंदन में रहे? मतलब तेरी दुनिया में दिल लगता नहीं, वापस बुला ले, मैं सजदे में गिरा हूँ, मुझको ये मालिक उठा ले. That kind of feeling is there in this poem, you know. This poem consists total of 263 lines, 263, and it begins where the speaker waits his friend Thales, उसके friend का नाम, speaker के friend का नाम Thales है, by the river Thames. Thames is a very popular religious river of London. It's a pipeline. It's a kind of main river, and he feels sorrowful because his friend has decided to leave London for the country Wales. Means Thales is leaving London and going to Wales. That is the Cambria. To Thales, Wales. Thales is moving to Wales, and they are both sitting beside the river Thames. Now the first line that opens, line number 1 and 2, though grief and fondness in my breast rebel, when injured Thales bids the town farewell. The poet is wounded. He is wounded because his friend, he is in grief because his friend is going to leave the city, and his breast is kind of in a position of rebel. And when he sees that his injured friend Thales, who has been emotionally hurt bids the town farewell. He is now in a mood to leave the city London, and he is sitting beside the river Thames and waiting for the ship to board in. But he respects his decision at the same time. The poet, the speaker, respects the decision of the Thames decision. And line number 3 to 4, he writes, "Yet still my calmer thoughts his choice commend. I praise the hermit, but regret the friend." I praise the hermit inside my friend who is asking him to leave London. But I am going to miss my friend, and that is why I regret that London could not contain my friend. The speaker claims that London is a dangerous place for the average citizen. His friend Thales agrees, believing that London has become so full of crime and violence that he no longer feels safe to be here, walking through its streets. I would like to quote line 224 to 25. "Prepare for death, if here at night you roam, and sign your will before you sup from home." Means every moment, death is waiting for you. Everywhere a murderer is waiting for you to kill you. When you move in the night, when you roam into the night, you can be, all chances that you can be murdered. And sign your will before you sup from home. आप घर से बाहर निकल कर जा रहे हो तो भाई अपना आखिरी इच्छा will लिख करके जाओ. पता नहीं घर आ पाओगे या नहीं. So the two men look over London, and for a moment things seem calm. Then Thales frowns and begins to explain why he had chosen to leave the city. भाई कोई ऐसे तो घर उजाड़ के अपना जाता नहीं है. क्यों जा रहा? Why is he leaving? Line number 13 to 14. Quote, "Here malice, rapine, accident conspire, and how a rabble rages, now a fire." To emphasize his message, these various abstract problems like rapes, accidents are personified. एक इंसान की तरह इन traits को कवि ने लाया है. Personified as beings that seek to destroy London. Thus the characters of malice, rapine, and accident conspire have been used in line number 13 to attack those who live in London. Means everywhere in London there is nothing but as if malice, rapine, accidents who are walking on the streets. Now, the poet goes into the reminiscences, goes to talk about the old glorification, when England was a lovely, lovely city. Thales feels that London and all of England, for that when London was a lovely city, and Thales feels that London and all of England, for that matter, has declined under the current government and its policies. The nation used to be nobler and more just. पहले बहुत अच्छा just हुआ करता था, न्यायप्रिय हुआ करता था. There were courageous kings such as Edward and Henry, who both won great military wars and victories against England's enemies. To quote line number 99 and 100, "Illustrious Edward, from the realms of joy, the land of heroes and sands survey." Is that kind of praise was there for King Edward, Now, there were also kings such as Alfred the Great, who was righteous and inspiring. Such monarchs created a climate that curtailed criminality. Thales believes that during Alfred the Great's reign, a single jail could have held half of England's criminals. इतना कम क्राइम होता था कि आधे क्रिमिनल्स तो एक ही जेल में आ जाए. To quote line number 248 to 49, "A single jail in Alfred's golden reign could half the nation's criminals contain." ये बहुत अच्छी बात. क्रिमिनल्स कम थे, पूरे तमाम क्रिमिनल्स की 50% तो एक ही जेल में समाहित हो जाते थे. That kind of discipline, that kind of law and order was prevailing in the time of Alfred the King. But see what happens today. And he invokes these old rulers to illustrate the heights of greatness from which London and England have fallen. Now, what is the condition of, you see what was the condition of London then when those rulers were running. Now what has become today? What is the situation? London is now full of criminals. Those who aren't breaking the law fall prey to those who are. Means criminals are only safe. Line number 15 to 16. Their ambush here relentless ruffians lay, and here the fell attorney prowls for prey. Means those who do not delve into the criminality, they are bound to become a criminal. Otherwise they are unsafe. And politicians are equally lambasted. And politicians are not far behind. They devote themselves to vice and gain by hoarding and lavishly spending so much wealth that could be used to help the poor. The elite class create an atmosphere of desperation in which the poor must resort to lives of crime in order to survive. There is so much inequality that the poor are forced to become corrupt. They also are influenced by the influential people of that time. And corruption leads to corruption. People everywhere are going hungry. Nobody is there to take care of. They are taken advantage of by the government, which supports pirates who prey on Englishmen. Meanwhile, the nation's leaders are allowed to grow rich day by day by running lotteries and collecting taxes from the poor. This is a kind of exploitation of the common masses. On their wealth they rise, politicians. And they were no different than other nations. The politicians of the Walpole time were setting the worst example of leadership. The corruption was on its high. This is 28 and 29 line number. The guard of commerce and the dread of Spain, ere masquerades debauched, excise oppressed. The oppressed. Excise was that much high that it was going to oppress the common people. The taxes were so high. And for the line number 58 to 59, let such raise palaces and manors buy, collect tax or farm a lottery. This is what they were doing. This is what the politicians were doing. They were collecting tax, they were farming, or a lottery they were indulged into. And these leaders are now driven by the love of money rather than the pursuit of services and noble aims, leaving Londoners at the mercy of such plutocrats, tycoons, big shots. Only a few big shots of London were ruling the entire city. Only a few of them, the influential, the big shots, were governing the government, and the common people were marginalized. It is said that Walpole spent around 50,000 pounds, as I said in the earlier, and that is why one sentence, and he was also taking command of the then media. It was the Gazette and the High Doctor, the two famous media houses, and Walpole has taken control over that. That is why Dr. Johnson, out of frustration because he could not write to his full, because he was not rich, because he was not influential, because he was not that much influential that he could make his appearance in the Gazetteer and the High Doctor. It made him to write, and there is a one single sentence, line number 176 to 177, line number 177 is a single line in this poem which is written in all capital. Let me read it out for you. This mournful truth is everywhere confessed. Slow rises worth, by poverty depressed. He writes that the worth, the talent rises slow because money depresses us. Money, the poverty depresses us because we are poor, because we don't have the command over the wealth, because we don't sit on the pile of gold or silver. That is why our talent grows slow. and slow rise is worth by poverty depressed, he wrote. These lines are in capital letters to highlight the pain felt by Dr. Johnson as a poet who had his dreams of advancement being abbreviated due to inadequate funds. Further, he writes in London, line number 178 to 180, I would like to quote, where all are slaves to gold, where looks are merchandise and smiles are sold, where won by bribes, by flatteries implored. We are the gold, we are the politicians are slaves to gold. They are slaves to wealth, they are slaves to money. And where looks is everything, where looks become merchandise and smiles are sold. Means if you appear poor, if you appear rugged, if you are wretched, nobody is going to listen to your worth and nobody is going to ponder over your talent. You were sidelined, you were marginalized, and we are won by bribes, and every contracts were taken by the bribes and flatteries. If you are near to a powerful person, flatter them, bribe them, grease their palms, and let your works be done. This was the condition of London. My God. The working classes, and how bold Dr. Johnson that he is able to pen down every details in his poem. He was penalized for this also, but even then he is not going to stop his pen. And he further writes that the working classes are subject to the whims of those with less character, but more money. They were characterless, but they were having just money in their hands. And that is why they were in a prominent positions of their city, of the nation. Tells fails that the entire city is falling into ruin, as in line number 17, falling houses thunder on your head. These houses are also dilapidated, not in proper condition. Out of bribe, the contract had been taken. Also the morality, there are two meanings in these sentences. Also the morality of the people living inside are also dead, and that is why falling houses thunder on your head. London city has become a city where the falling houses thunder on your head. And the condition of falling education. Thales argues that the status of education in London is deplorable. He claims that unrewarded science toils in vain. There are a lot of talented, and that is why Thomas Gray has also written in his Gray's Elegy, written in County Churchyard, where you see that talents were not properly given a place and they went unheard and they died. They were buried, unsung. So here the same Dr. Johnson is arguing that the status of education in London is deplorable. He claims that unrewarded science toils in vain, indicating that the city no longer prioritizes education and higher learning. What will happen to the nation? What will happen to the nation if the HRD, higher education or the education, primary basic education is not in prominence? Line number 115. All sciences are fasting Monsieur knows and bid him go to hell he goes. Everybody, everything is going in a hell. The narrator attributes these maladies to the misguided culture, but lays most of the blame on the greedy and indifferent government, lamenting how each official constantly tries to, line number 25, tries to raise his treasures higher than before. If today I have 10 crores, tomorrow I should have 20 crores. Likewise, this kind of selfishness, this kind of utilitarianism led the then England to its nadir, to its lowest position. Now, Thales asks to be given a place where honor, kindness, and wisdom aren't looked down upon. He wants to go into that world where kindness should be cherished, where honesty should be worshipped, where wisdom should be respected. And he wants a better life than the one he has in London. While giving his harangue, his diatribe, his attack against London, Thales stands ready to disembark for Wales which was then known as Cambria. He encourages his audience to do likewise, and he writes in line number 174, 175 to quote, "Quick, let us rise, the happy seats explore, and bear oppression's insolence no more. We should not behave indolent against oppressions. If there is oppression, indolency should be forsaken, and we should now raise against it. Now, foretells London's problems are unsolvable. It cannot be solved, meaning that the only real solution to move out is to move away from the town. You cannot do anything. Now London has become so corrupted that it cannot do anything. Just if you want to save yourself, you have to move from the city. This is the only thing you can do." Even though the speaker regrets his friend's decision to leave, he can understand it as well. जान रहे हैं छोड़ के जाना बहुत दुश्वार है, लेकिन उसके सिवा कोई उपाय भी तो नहीं है. They share the romanticized vision of the countryside. To the country, गांव की प्रशंसा में, rustic life की प्रशंसा में वो कहते हैं, where honesty and sense are no disgrace. जहां पर honesty and sense, wisdom, disgrace नहीं माना जाता है. Thales imagines escaping to some pleasing bank where verdant orgies play, जहां पर ऑजियस जो वुड हैं, वो एक तरीके का पेड़, वो हरे हरे पेड़, वो खेलते हैं, जहाँ झूमते हैं, नेचर की उन वादियों में हम चलते हैं. और पीसफुल वेल, एक ऐसी घाटी में जहाँ नेचर पेंटिंग्स गए, जहाँ की नेचर अपनी अच्छी पेंटिंग कर रहा है, मानो प्रकृति अपनी खुमारी पे है और वहाँ पर बहुत सुंदर दृश्य पैदा हो रहा है. चलो उस तरीके के गाँव में, चलो उन घाटियों में, चलो उस प्रकृति की गोद में. He longs for a natural setting full of life and color as opposed to the decay and filth of the streets of London near the Thames. Now, at the end of the poem, friends, he tells the speaker that he still has much to add. बहुत सारी बातें कहने लगूं तो इतनी सारी बातें खत्म नहीं होंगी. There is much to add, but they have run out of time since the boat has arrived. वो जिस बोट का इंतजार कर रहे थे, थेम्स नदी के किनारे वेल्स जाने के लिए, जिस बोट का इंतजार कर रहे थे, that has arrived. Since his boat has arrived, अब उसको जाना है. He foresees a time, देखता है आने वाले समय में, when his friend will also join him and leave London, when his youth and health and fortune are gone, and then feeling enraged enough to pen a satire against the city. एक ऐसा भी वक्त आएगा, वो विश करता है कि तुम भी सिटी से थक जाओगे और सिटी के ऊपर कभी भी तुम एक सटायर लिखोगे, presumably in the form of this poem, London itself. So thank you very much, friend. This was in nutshell. I tried to explain what is satire, what is juvenile satire, the background of the poem, why was it written, the 3 acts, 3 rules that became the temporary reason to write this poem, and all the things in detail in this limited, because I have limitations in this YouTube video. I hope that you will see and you will watch it again and again till you get the masses clear. Thank you very much, friends. I will see you in the next video. Till then, goodbye. Take care.